For nearly 3 decades, they were Hollywood's picture of devotion, a couple that seemed to defy the odds. But behind the flawless smiles and red carpet hand-holding, something far more complicated was quietly unraveling. And now, Deborra-Lee Furness isn't just ready to talk about it. She's ready to publish it. Reports claim the Australian actress has been seen meeting with top publishers in New York City, shopping for what insiders describe as a bold, emotional memoir about love, identity, and starting over. And if those whispers are true, this could be one of the most explosive tell-alls Hollywood has seen in years. Because this isn't just a breakup story. It's the story of a woman reclaiming her name after decades of being known only as Hugh Jackman's wife. For years, she stood beside one of the world's most beloved movie stars. But after their split, and her shocking statement describing a traumatic journey of betrayal, it seems Deborra-Lee is done staying silent. She's ready to speak, and the world is about to find out what really went wrong behind the perfect Hollywood facade. Before the world ever called her Mrs. Wolverine, Deborra-Lee Furness was already a respected Australian actress and director with a promising career of her own. But once she married Hugh Jackman in 1996, everything changed. Overnight, the spotlight that once shone on her artistry was swallowed by the blinding glare of his superstardom. For years, every headline, every red carpet moment, every interview introduction seemed to carry the same label, Hugh Jackman's wife. It wasn't malicious, but it was constant. Even when she championed major causes like adoption reform or women's rights, the coverage always circled back to her marriage. She became part of his brand, the loving, supportive wife who stood proudly beside the Marvel icon, while her own identity quietly faded into the background. Behind closed doors, those who knew her say it was an ongoing struggle, wanting to celebrate her husband's success without losing her sense of self. The imbalance grew as the years went on. He became a global megastar, while she found herself increasingly defined by the man she married rather than the woman she was. And that's what makes this rumored memoir so powerful. For the first time, Deborra-Lee may finally be stepping out of that long shadow to tell the world who she really is, not as someone's wife, but as herself. When Deborra-Lee Furness and Hugh Jackman announced their separation in September 2023, the world was stunned. They'd been married for nearly 3 decades, a rarity in Hollywood, and to fans, they seemed unbreakable. There were no public fights, no tabloid meltdowns, no visible cracks in their picture-perfect partnership. The statement they released together was calm, almost painfully polite, promising mutual respect and ongoing love. But behind that polished announcement, sources claim the emotional distance had been growing for years. Friends of the couple quietly hinted that the split wasn't sudden. They'd reportedly been living separate lives long before the public even knew. Jackman's career had taken him across the globe, from Broadway to blockbuster sets, while Deborra-Lee retreated to Australia, focusing on family, charity work, and rebuilding her personal identity away from Hollywood's chaos. Insiders say she found peace in that space, but also loneliness. Then came May 2025. Nearly 2 years after the public announcement, Deborra-Lee finally filed for divorce in New York. The move was clean, quiet, and surprisingly low profile considering their fame. There were no angry statements, no messy legal battles, at least not in public. Everything about the process felt controlled, almost as if both were trying to suppress any hint of drama. But when a couple that famous stays that silent, it only fuels curiosity, because sometimes silence isn't peace, it's protection. And as we'd soon find out, that silence was only the calm before Deborra-Lee's storm. Thanks for watching. Gemini. For nearly 2 years after their separation, Deborra-Lee Furness maintained a dignified silence. She avoided interviews, kept her social media discreet, and let the world assume that her split from Hugh Jackman had been civil, maybe even friendly. But in May 2025, everything changed with a single statement. In what she described as a deeply personal reflection, Deborra-Lee finally opened up about what she called the traumatic journey of betrayal. The words were raw, deliberate, and they instantly shattered the calm narrative that had surrounded their breakup. "It's a profound wound that cuts deep," she wrote, adding that healing had been a spiritual challenge guided by her belief that the universe is always working for us. Fans were stunned. The phrasing wasn't vague. It hinted at emotional devastation, something far darker than a peaceful parting. Online forums exploded with speculation about what betrayal truly meant. Was it infidelity, broken trust, a secret that never reached the public eye? No one knew for sure, but one thing was clear. This wasn't the same polished, patient Deborra-Lee the world had seen before. Reports later suggested that Jackman was blindsided by her words, that he hadn't expected such a raw, unfiltered confession. For years, he'd been the one shaping the public tone of their story. Gentle, measured, PR-friendly. But with one statement, Deborra-Lee flipped the script. That post wasn't just a confession. It was a declaration of independence. For the first time, she was speaking directly, emotionally, and unapologetically. And whether people agreed with her or not, one thing was certain. The tone of this divorce had just changed forever. It started as a whisper, a casual sighting in Midtown Manhattan, but quickly snowballed into one of the most talked-about rumors in Hollywood publishing. Spilling curiosity. According to insiders, Deborra-Lee Furness was recently spotted leaving the offices of a major New York publisher, clutching what witnesses described as a stack of sample pages and handwritten notes. Steady delivery. To onlookers, it looked less like a casual meeting and more like the birth of a book deal. Sources claim the project being shopped is a bold, emotional memoir about love, identity, and starting over. The words alone hint that this isn't just another celebrity vanity book. It's a possible tell-all about her decades-long marriage, the unraveling that followed, and the rediscovery of her own voice. One publishing insider even described the meeting as having the energy of a negotiation. Now, to be clear, nothing has been confirmed. Neither Deborra-Lee nor her representatives has addressed the rumors, but industry chatter says the interest is real, and publishers are eager. Why? Because this story has everything. Hollywood glamour, heartbreak, betrayal, and a woman long overshadowed by one of the most beloved actors on earth finally taking back the narrative. Friends close to her reportedly say she's reclaiming her truth. For years, she lived in someone else's story, the dutiful partner beside the global star. But now, she's ready to speak her own. If this memoir truly exists, it won't just be another chapter in a celebrity breakup. It'll be Deborra-Lee's full circle moment, a chance to redefine herself on her own terms, in her own words. And judging by how the publishing world is buzzing, that voice is one a lot of people are very ready to hear. Closing. For most of their marriage, Deborra-Lee Furness played a role the public rarely questioned. The supportive wife, the quiet strength behind Hugh Jackman's fame. But those close to her say that image came with a heavy price. Behind the glossy magazine covers and award show smiles, she was fighting to hold on to herself in a world that constantly reminded her she was the other half of someone else's story. Hollywood is ruthless when it comes to identity. For a woman in her 50s, then 60s, it's even harsher. Casting calls slowed down, scripts stopped coming, and the focus shifted from her talent to her marriage. Yet while the world saw comfort and luxury, Deborra-Lee reportedly struggled with invisibility, not just in the industry, but in her own life. Friends describe her as deeply spiritual, constantly journaling, searching for meaning, and trying to reinvent herself beyond the label of Mrs. Jackman. Her advocacy work became her outlet: adoption reform, child welfare, and women's rights. It gave her purpose, but it didn't erase the pain of feeling overshadowed. Every red carpet, every interview, every question about Hugh, it reinforced the quiet imbalance that had grown between them. And as her husband's career soared to global superstardom, Deborra-Lee was left navigating a crossroads: stay the silent supporter, or step into the unknown and reclaim her own narrative. That's what makes her rumored memoir so symbolic. It's not just about exposing secrets or reliving heartbreak. It's about transformation. The cost of reinvention is steep. You lose comfort, familiarity, sometimes even love. But in return, you gain something priceless: your voice. And after years of quiet endurance, Deborra-Lee seems ready to use hers louder than ever before. The plot took a sharp turn. While Hugh Jackman's decades-long marriage to Deborra-Lee Furness drew to a close, the actor quietly began forging a new chapter, one that's already reshaping how his public and personal life are viewed. First, the division of the empire. Sources report Jackman and Furness have agreed to split a combined fortune estimated at around $387 million US, a portfolio that spans homes in the US, Australia, and the UK. Professional pacing. One of the earliest visible moves in New York City's Chelsea neighborhood, Jackman and Furness arranged the division of a luxury penthouse. Records show Furness paid Jackman around $11.7 million US to take full ownership of the NYC residence they once shared. On the surface, the settlement looks calm and controlled, but the echoes of change are loud. Calm. Next, the emotional tilt. While Hugh Jackman went public with her feelings of betrayal and reclaimed her voice, Jackman shifted into his next era. He's been linked publicly since January 2025 with Sutton Foster, his former Broadway co-star, whose friendship with him dates back years. Their dinner sightings and red carpet debut have made headlines, suggesting that Jackman's move into this new chapter isn't just personal, it's symbolic. What this means for the dynamics, with he's no longer part of a power couple story. He's starring in one of his own choosing. His ex's voice is rising, his new relationship is public. The balance of narrative power is shifting. The kids, the shared history, the assets, they're all part of the backdrop now to a brand new scene. And this is where the tension lies. For decades, the public accepted the Jackman and Furness brand, the loyal husband, the supportive wife, the Hollywood family. Now, each person is stepping into their own story. Jackman's next act might look effortless on the red carpet, but behind it are complex shifts in alignment, loyalty, legacy, and the question of who you become when the we turns into me. So, if Deborra-Lee Furness truly moves forward with this memoir, it won't just be another celebrity book. It'll be a cultural moment, because this isn't only her story. It's Hugh's story. It's their children's story. And it's a mirror reflecting how Hollywood treats women who dare to speak after decades of silence. For Deborra-Lee, this could be the most defining act of her career, not as an actress, but as a woman, reclaiming authorship over her own life. For years, she lived in a narrative built by others, the loyal wife, the quiet supporter, the background to someone else's fame. A memoir would flip that lens, letting her tell the story from the inside, her version, her truth, her emotions unfiltered. It's not about revenge, it's about release. And in an industry where women are often told to age gracefully and stay quiet, that's a radical act. For Hugh Jackman, it could be a test of image. The man long seen as Hollywood's gentleman, kind, humble, almost untouchable, might now face the uncomfortable glare of public curiosity. Even if Deborra-Lee never names or blames, the public will read between every line. Every page could shift perception. Not necessarily to destroy him, but to remind the world that no marriage, not even the golden ones, is free of cracks. For their two children, Oscar and Ava, it's more personal. They've grown up in the shadow of fame, now watching their parents become front-page headlines again. But this time, not for a red carpet, but for a reckoning. Insiders say Deborra-Lee's main goal is healing, not harm, and that her book could even help her kids understand the woman she was before the world labeled her as someone's wife. And for Hollywood, this could be a wake-up call. Behind every glamorous power couple, there's often an unspoken imbalance, a partner who fades so the other can shine. If Deborra-Lee's memoir lands the way people expect, it could spark deeper conversations about identity, sacrifice, and the emotional cost of living in someone else's spotlight. So, when this memoir hits shelves, if it ever does, it won't just be a story of heartbreak. It'll be a statement, a reminder that even in a city built on illusion, truth still has the power to shake the walls. For nearly 30 years, Deborra-Lee Furness and Hugh Jackman seemed untouchable, a Hollywood couple everyone pointed to when they wanted to believe that fame and forever could coexist. But as the curtain falls on that fairy tale, what's emerging is something far more real and far more human. If the reports are true, and Deborra-Lee's tell-all is on the horizon, it won't just peel back the glossy surface of a high-profile marriage. It'll reveal the heartbeat of a woman rediscovering herself after years of silence. The story isn't just about betrayal or heartbreak. It's about rebirth. It's about what happens when someone decides they no longer want to live as a supporting character in their own life. Hollywood loves a comeback story, and this might be Deborra-Lee's greatest one yet. Not as the wife of a superstar, but as a woman unafraid to speak, to feel, and to own her truth. Because when love ends, the story doesn't have to. Sometimes that's when it truly begins. So the question remains, when her truth finally hits the page, whose image will it rewrite more, his or hers? Finally, some